Hello everyone, and welcome to After Alexander, episode 108, Looking Outwards. Last time, we settled Antiochus V, also known as Antiochus IV in the history books, into his new role as king. We saw stories of nightly debauchery, flagrant extravagance, and a third sibling marriage in a row. Let's see how he gets on today. Edwin Bevan reports Appian's account that Antiochus V ruled from a position of autocracy and power once he managed to secure his throne. He had a set of two brothers who were his chief ministers, called Heraclides and Timarchus, who were supposedly from Miletus. Purportedly, they had gotten their power, quote, in the vilest of ways, end quote. Bevan does not elaborate, but coupled to his account of our monarch's profligacy last time, I suspect sexual favours of some kind were implied to have been involved. I'm tempted to look into this further in time for our recap episode when we eventually get there, but who knows. Timarchus was given governance of the eastern satrapies of the empire, while Heraclides was put in charge of the treasury. The king also gave the leading cities of the regions of Tarsus, Malus, and Cilicia to his mistress, a woman known as Antiochus. I find this name interesting. I'm not sure whether this name was just common by now, or whether she is somehow of royal lineage, as the mistress of Ptolemy IV had been. I seem to recall that anyway from episode 72. Anyway, these regions quickly rebelled against her and the king, and we get this information apparently from the second book of Maccabees. This is once again a reminder to me that the book of Maccabees is going to be a useful source in future episodes. Now, despite his delegation on the admin front, Antiochus V was always happy to partake in the regional festivals of his territories, which seems very in character given what we know from last time. As regards foreign diplomacy, the overarching question was how to treat the Romans in view of the growing anti-Roman feeling which Perseus of Macedon was at the heart of. To get a bit of a general diplomatic picture, the Seleucids at this time were close with Pergamon, which is to be expected given their friendly interactions with Antiochus when he was becoming a king, but is somewhat surprising given their recent history. Antiochus III would no doubt be turning in his grave. Together with Cappadocia, the Seleucids and Pergamon formed a bloc in the eastern Mediterranean. These three states were all pro-Roman in their outlook. However, the very fact they were all allied with each other checked Rome's power in the eastern Mediterranean. Rome was aware of this fact and grumbled, but the three themselves also knew it, and it can't have been unwelcome news, given the dominance of Rome we've seen in recent episodes. Antiochus maintained a very respectful attitude toward the Roman Republic. Granted, in the first couple of years after he took power, the Seleucids fell behind on their war reparations while Antiochus V secured his throne. However, in 173 he sent a diplomatic mission to Rome led by a certain Apollonius. This diplomatic mission was friendly to Rome, and Rome herself also maintained friendly relations in response. However, despite this respectful outward attitude, don't get the wrong idea. Antiochus V was, quote, at heart no friend to Rome, end quote. Diplomatic exchanges travelled between Pella and Antioch, with the aim of establishing alliance between Macedon and the Seleucids. Rome found out about this and sent diplomats in 173-172. Antiochus managed to persuade them that he had resisted the tempting overtures of Perseus and that he remained, of course, a friend to the Romans. All the while, however, he was breaking the terms of the Treaty of Apamea in the background, building a new fleet in the dockyards of Phoenicia and stabling elephants at Apamea. We get reports of this in 170 BCE, in clear violation of the terms we laid out in episode 98. However, we must now pull our gaze away from Roman and Macedonian affairs. This is because, for what feels like the 50th time, we need to turn to Egypt. Remember, as we talked about in episodes 83 and 84, Antiochus' elder sister Cleopatra had been married off to Ptolemy V of Egypt, and would have 3 children with him: Ptolemy VI, Cleopatra II, and Ptolemy VIII. And yes, I did say Ptolemy VIII, not the 7th. I'm sure we'll get to that family mess at some point in the future. Well, Ptolemy V had died in 182 BCE, during the reign of Seleucus IV. I suppose that technically counts as an event that happened in Seleucus' reign and that I should have covered at the time, but in the first instance it feels more appropriate to slot it in now given what's about to happen, and secondly, I don't feel bad for giving the years leading up to 175 as little attention as I did. Given how anticlimactic his reign was, Seleucus IV doesn't deserve, let's call it credit, for the death of Ptolemy V. Anyway, Cleopatra was now acting as regent for her young son, Ptolemy VI. Remember that Ptolemy VI was born in 186 BCE, the year after his grandfather's death. As such, he was about 4 years old when he became the new pharaoh. Just to fill out the family tree a little bit, Ptolemy VIII was born in about 182 BCE, so the year his father died, and a paper from 2014 speculates that Cleopatra II was born shortly before her first brother, despite Wikipedia saying she was born the year after Ptolemy VI. Let's say she was born in about 188 or 187, or alternatively 185 if you believe the Wikipedia version of events, for the sake of argument. Count this as a mini correction, supplemental, or else just a question mark to what I said in episode 84 about her birth year. Whenever Cleopatra II was born, all the children of Ptolemy V were toddlers or babies. So, as of 182 BCE, the then king Seleucus IV had a sister ruling in Egypt, rather than a brother-in-law. This pretty much made the Seleucid southwestern flank safe. However, fast forward to 173 BCE, when Antiochus IV and Antiochus V were co-ruling, and the year before the birth of our current king's son, and Cleopatra I also died. More modern sources list her death in 170 BCE, when Antiochus V was busy taking sole power. We said that Cleopatra I was born in 216 BCE, 2 years before her brother Mithridates, the future Antiochus V. So she died at around 40 to 43 years old, depending when exactly she died. This threw everything up into the air again. A group hostile to the Seleucids came to power, led by a eunuch called Eulaeus and a man called Lennaeus. Antiochus V sent Apollonius as a diplomat to the court of Ptolemy VI, and Apollonius reported a threatening atmosphere at court. It was assumed that an assault by Egyptian forces on Seleucid territory was imminent. So Antiochus V marshalled an army and marched south, down as far as Joppa. He essentially made sure of the fact that an Egyptian invasion was not coming, and then marched back north when he was satisfied. Still, tension bubbled. Egypt still smarted from the loss of Hollow Syria to Antiochus III. They were determined that this was not the end of the Hollow Syria question, nor indeed of the Syrian Wars. They prepared for war. This put Antiochus in a bind. He couldn't just ignore these flagrant preparations, but he was aware that, if he attacked first, he might bring Rome down on his head. As Bevan writes, quote, "And now the storm in the west, which had been gathering so long, at last burst." End quote. In 171 BCE, Perseus of Macedon and the Roman Republic went to war. A Seleucid envoy arrived in Rome to complain about Egypt's aggression, as we mentioned above, only to find out that Rome was completely distracted by Macedonian affairs. Another mission was duly sent under Meleager and Heraclides to convince Rome that war between the Seleucids and Egypt was not imminent, as the Seleucids were not the aggressive party. An Egyptian delegation was also present, and Roman intervention was sought. However, both sides were essentially fobbed off, as Rome would not give a verdict until Macedon was sorted out. Instead, the consul Quintus Marcius was given the job of being the Roman representative to Ptolemy VI. With Rome distracted, you all know by now that war is coming. Well, I won't keep you in suspense. In 170 BCE, Egypt did in fact invade. Euaeus and Linnaeus, now regents of Egypt with Cleopatra I out of the way, attacked with the aim of taking Hollow Syria back. Their goal, as explained to the populace of Alexandria before they left, was to use Egypt's vast wealth to bribe the men holding garrisons in the region. So, the Sixth Syrian War is upon us. However, that will have to wait until next time. As always, thank you all for listening. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to get in touch at the show's email address. Until next time, have a great week, everyone.